Hi everyone, welcome to my review of M. Night Shyamalan's After Earth in 2013. So here we are. I said I probably wouldn't be doing any more, Shyamalan reviews until kind of January. But I did actually watch this the other day, and basically, yeah, I just thought I wanted to review it now. I might even watch The Visit as well before the new year. And yes, After Earth is a film that really, along with The Last Airbender and The Happening, are critically, kind of panned in every single way. Very few supports here. Of course, IMDb scores are very low as well. And actually at the box office, all things considered, this didn't do too well. And yes, Will Smith, Jaden Smith, so father-son cast in here. And of course, yeah, it's kind of a story that was, I guess, I hear it was conceived by Will Smith himself, kind of thing. And yeah, basically, this was meant to be another film where Jaden, got this kind of stardom here and everything, and kind of an interest, a really nice way to kind of bring the father-son thing into just a single film, because they are the two main characters of the film. And of course, Shyamalan, many people thought maybe he could come back, but yeah, basically this film, I have mentioned it maybe a couple of times on my channel, and I did watch it probably 2014 or around that, just soon after it came out, and kind of. I thought, it wasn't as bad as people made out, because it was called one of the worst films ever made again, in true Shyamalan fashion, and actually I'm still scratching my head how The Last Airbender is actually considered one of the 10 worst films ever made, if not the worst. I will never know, because it's not even for me a bad film. It isn't good overall for me, but I think it's mediocre. But to call it, there's so many films that are worse, and I think he gets a lot of unfair hate. Lady in the Water was fine. It was nothing special, but it was okay. Definitely not one of the worst. The Happening, yeah, it is bad, but it's hilarious. And yeah, basically, again, not one of the worst films ever made. Actually, The Happening again. This one, I think actually it's a bit worse than I remembered. Still, not one of the worst films ever made. It really isn't. I kind of came in from school one day and I watched it. I was probably a bit tired on this occasion, and I watched it and I kind of thought, yeah, that's pretty. It wasn't that good, but it wasn't an awful film, and I don't think it's an awful film. On a rewatch, actually sitting down properly and watching this, it's not an awful film. It has some, decent things at times, aspects, but it is actually for me a bad film. It's one of the only Shyamalans that is bad. This and The Happening, and actually, of course, I prefer The Happening because I do actually really like that. I don't like this. It's the only one I do actually dislike, actively. I don't dislike The Last Airbender. I don't really like it. It's somewhere in between that one, and the rest I either like or love. And this one, I think I do dislike it, but it's not. Again, it is the extra. I think panning is due to, because it's Shyamalan. Unfortunately, what a shame. This guy has had this, and this is, I believe it's got like around 11% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. And yes. This film is a sci-fi film. Of course, the clue is kind of in the name, and yeah, it's kind of Nova Prime. There's a home in Nova Prime, and it's kind of Will Smith and Jada Smith and the family are kind of the most prominent family in this, and he's kind of the supreme leader or whatever. And basically, they go on this mission. You see loads of kind of things at the beginning, building up this legendary character of Cypher Rage. Which is an interesting name. It is a weird name, that, Cypher Rage. And his son, Katai, played by Jaden Smith, kind of looks up to him, because, Will Smith's character is built up as this legendary leader, and kind of just warrior, and he can ghost. Basically what that means is if there's no fear, the kind of the enemies that they were kind of put down on different planets can't see him. They can't really, because they can't actually see, they can only smell fear. So yeah, basically, because he doesn't fear anything, and he's like an ultimate soldier, a kind of ideal soldier, what you'd think, fantastical kind of viewpoint of it. Then yeah, he can't be seen. It's interesting how the enemies are all blind in the first place, and how they can kind of arrange. There's one point where there's different bodies on a tree in a particular way. That how would they be able to do that? But it's fine. And yeah, basically, that's what the aim of the film is, really, is to make Jaden Smith, once they crash land, this team, including Will Smith's character of Cypher Rage, is to make him more more of a kind of a grown up, you could say. It's trying to go for that, and it's kind of, which kind of annoys me at times in films. But yeah, basically, it's also trying to make him fearless. Some people have described this as basically Jaden going through, his character going through the film and then becoming more boring by the end. You could say that, you know, at first, as well, on the nose, kind of, at first they're trying to make him more, you know, kind of jolly, and he keeps grinning weirdly. It's very, very weird. And then, you know, it's kind of course, you're meant to look back to that and think, oh, he was so kind of upbeat and everything and naive or whatever, and then he becomes an ultimate warrior who doesn't fear anything and doesn't really feel anything. But then again, the way it ends, I was confused about what I had to feel because it was just very, very pointless. The way that it kind of just, you know, kind of, yeah, it was very, very weird. I probably won't get into any spoilers in this film. There's not really anything to spoil. No one really dies in the film that you don't see. Kind of die in the first 10 minutes or so of just the random guys, you know, and stuff. And yeah, this film, you know, they do crash land on basically Earth, you know, in the future. And yeah, it's I don't know what it was meant to kind of be when Will Smith said, you know, where we are and all this. Of course, they were on Earth, and the film is called After Earth. So yeah, it's kind of weird. There's not really any twists, really. Like Shyamalan, what many people think he always goes for, which it's not always the case. But yeah, there's not really any twists, and it's kind of just a sci-fi adventure, kind of survival film. It's not an awful film, but it is for me a bad one because it works. It doesn't really work on much levels. You know, I think, and I'm not gonna. I have massive respect for Will Smith and the fact that, you know, his son was in the film and everything, quite a young age, and it went badly. You know, it is very unfortunate, and you know, I think, but it is, again, you know, that's what you gotta go in for. There's a chance that any film could fail, really. So if it does, and you're criticised, I mean, that is kind of how life works. That's how film works. So I don't think you can kind of be shocked that much, you know, and kind of think, oh, everyone's evil for criticising it. But yeah, it didn't work out. You know, I think the performances are not, they're not impressive for me. You know, I'm not, you know, I don't connect to the performances. Will Smith is definitely worse, and none of them are good. You know, and the characters just aren't that good at all. Will Smith's character becomes just completely non-existent. You know, I think the writing is not good, really. You know, Shyamalan is not, the script is actually, it's not good in this film. You know, I think the cinematography, kind of, it's probably one of the worst, you know, cases of this in a Shyamalan film. Most of the other ones, even The Happening, were very well shot at times. This one, you know, it has moments where it's quite nice visuals, but really it's not quite as much to do with the camera movements and all this. It's just this nice locations, kind of vibrant locations. The colours are pretty decent, you know, use of colours in the film. But yeah, really, the cinematography is pretty disappointing by Shyamalan standards. I expected a bit more on a rewatch. And yeah, the editing is very, very weird at times when you have some flashbacks of the family. Yeah, I think, of course, I see what he's going for. And he obviously tried to more of the exposition in there in the flashbacks. But yeah, I just don't think, I think it's very off-tone at times where other characters from the past were talking to him. It just didn't quite work for me. And yes, basically, once they land on Earth, it is mainly Jaden Smith. You know, at times he's in contact, of course, especially early on with Will Smith's character of Cypher Rage, his father. And yes, basically, it is mainly the, you know, Katai going through, you know, kind of just running through from enemies, proving himself, learning the ways, trying to survive with these oxygen vials, and a couple of them break, of course, as would happen, you know, and stuff. And yeah, it's a very, very short film, and I don't think it really achieves much. You know, it doesn't really say anything. It's not really that human, really. I don't feel compared to all of the Shyamalan films, really. I just think it's very, very, you know, it doesn't work in a lot of areas. The action is at times quite good. You know, it's pretty impressive at times, but most of the time it is kind of just standard. You know, standard kind of modern blockbuster. There's nothing really. This does not feel like a Shyamalan in any scene at all, really. I don't think. I think even less so than The Last Airbender, which of course was not a bad film for me, but it didn't feel like a Shyamalan. The Happening had some elements in there. Lady in the Water was when it started going yes, it was unique in a Shyamalan way, but not you know, like his previous ones. And it, you know, had elements that just really you couldn't recognise it was Shyamalan. But yes, this one feels completely you know, away from that, and just it is really just a modern standard kind of sci-fi film in many ways. But then the acting is bad. Unfortunately, the script isn't good. You know, and it is just, it's very boring at times. It's the only Shyamalan that I feel is boring. It's just my opinion, and I can see at moments what it's going for, and there is some tension in the film. But really, the stretches of the film, especially when he's not in contact and has Will Smith becomes more and more deteriorates over the film, where it becomes more and more bland, and then the final 20 minutes really is just, the location isn't good. The kind of weird excuse that they had to kind of go up the volcano to get the signal, and then the fact that the enemy, you know, at the end is just the fight there. It's not bad, but it's not engaging for me really at all, and it's just, yeah, it's just there, and you've got a kind of a very bizarre and rushed ending, I feel. And yes, that is After Earth. The score isn't very standout by James Newton Howard, which is very interesting. You know, I think usually his scores are amazing in the Shyamalan films. And yeah, just basically The Happening and kind of yeah, The Happening was the one that was the worst up until this. The score, I really liked the Last Airbender one. This one, it's just kind of standard. You know, I don't really feel, I just recognise, you know, that in my mind it's a Newton Howard score, and really the use of it throughout is pretty standard. That's what this film is really. Very standard in places. Some decent aspects. Nothing amazing. Not even the score this time round. Not even the visuals really. You have some decent action. The bit where he glides down, it's pretty good. But nothing's great. The acting and the script is bad. You know, and mostly just the whole narrative is just one that really doesn't really move me as it could have done, and it doesn't uplift me and kind of make me feel that great either. So yeah, it's not really got any moving moments in the film. There's a lot of things that just as well really don't make sense for me as well, when he freezes temporarily, and then he gets dragged very close to this thing under the ground, where he could have just stayed instead of just lying there. It's just moments that, you know, many people say about loads of other films, but this one is so on the nose, you know, throughout the film. There's so many moments that just don't make sense. How at times he doesn't respond to Will Smith's you know, dialogue through the you know, the kind of interaction. At moments where, you know, I thought, why is he not hearing this? Why is he not saying just, yeah, I'm okay, or something? It just didn't make sense a lot of the film. It's very uninspired. I think I understand what he was going for at times, but other times it was just a misfire for me, an unfortunate one. It didn't work out. You know, I think again, this doesn't really feel like a Shyamalan. Yes, it's conceived a little bit by Will Smith, but you know, it's not really an excuse to not feel like Shyamalan in the style, at least. You know, kind of all of his other films really have got some sort of visual style. Again, less so the Last Airbender, but kind of you know, even then, it has got a visual palette that's impressive, but this one hasn't. So overall, I think After Earth gets you know, a bad score from me. It's not an awful film. There is some things that, you know, it has slightly going for it, but again, this is not one that's kind of bad in the script and the acting, and it has some great moments or some really impressive stuff, like The Happening. You know, the visuals I was very impressed by at times. The score was pretty good, and the use of tension overall. This one, you know, it's not as low with the acting. You know, the acting, I think, well, actually you could say that. You know, you could say that Will Smith is probably just as bad as some people in The Happening. Maybe not as bad as the worst performance in The Happening. Watch my review for that. But you know, I think I definitely prefer watching Mark Wahlberg than kind of lifeless characters in this. That's the thing. This doesn't quite go to the lows in terms of the script, the acting, and the consistently, you know, shockingly bizarre and bad scenes. Although very enjoyable of The Happening, it kind of has a very much more of a bland feel. You know, just a film that is a sci-fi that I don't really see what was you know, the kind of idea really in what they're trying to say. But then again, you know, films don't always have to say particular things all the time. You know, you can have general themes. This one, yeah, father-son relationship and kind of just maturing to an adult, but really because the ending as well kind of undoes that in many ways, you know, and the fact that it's just seeing this unfold is very, very boring for me at times, and other times just yeah, it's just there. It's nothing really that I felt, you know, or experienced. It was just something that I was looking at and it was happening and it didn't really mean much. So yeah, I think some good visuals. Yeah, some good visuals or decent visuals. The score wasn't bad. I think there was moments where Jaden is is not too bad, but mostly the performances are bad throughout the film, and it's just kind of a pointless film at times. But I think much respect to Shyamalan. He doesn't deserve the flat out. This is one of the worst films ever made. It just there's so many things films that are so much worse than this. But this is a misfire for sure. This is how I'd sum it up. I'd have to give it a 33%. I think slightly better than The Happening, but of course I'd take The Happening any day. And this is actually my least favourite Shyamalan film. I doubt The Visit. I've not seen The Visit yet. I've seen the opening scene. That's it. On a clip online, and yeah, basically. I don't imagine, even though I've not seen it, I can say in advance, I don't imagine it being worse than this. So really, I think this will always be the worst Shyamalan film. But again, I think much respect to Shyamalan, and it's a shame that it didn't work out. That's just the way it works. I don't feel, there was loads and loads of him put into this film at all. His unique feel, his ideas. And really, I don't really feel that the performances. Yeah, I can say that I don't think the performances really. There was much emotion in there, and kind of the commitment that really I see from Will Smith all the time, and Jaden Smith. Not one of the worst performances, but it's not good. It doesn't work for me, and it's just I can't defend it. Yeah, I can only defend it so much, kind of thing. I don't really think this is a film that kind of there was loads of effort put into it, and it just wasn't thought out that well. A lot of it just doesn't really work. There's some satisfying moments, with the survival elements, but even then, that's a bit underwhelming as well. Everything in this film is underwhelming apart from, at times the visuals. But again, by Shyamalan standards, I'm always blown away by the early Shyamalans in the visual department and every department. This guy is a genius. I'm saying this in the After Earth review because I think this is definitely going to be his lowest point. But very inspirational that he's come back now. He's made Split, which is one of the best. Well, we'll get to that. It's absolutely stunning, though. I think as well. Glass looks like it could quite easily be absolutely amazing. And the fact that he's kind of come back and he said, "Yeah, you know what? I don't care. I'm gonna make films that I want to make." And it's nothing to do with the critics because he made consecutive kind of disappointments critically. He didn't respond to that. He kind of thought. He obviously felt that he wasn't making the films that he wanted to make, and now he has done that again, and that is absolutely brilliant. Very pleased, and of course, this film is bad. A 33% is a very low score from me, and that's even, the fact that I was trying to find some real positives in the film. It just didn't come about. It's a very short film, and it's just kind of a pointless film at times to me, and it has got many flaws, many bad moments, but it has got some decent moments lit throughout. The ending, the last 20 minutes though, it is really disappointing, and a throwaway ending that didn't make any sense to me. This film didn't make much sense, but Shyamalan has come back, and although this is a bad film, it's one of his only bad films actually. Despite what many people say, that he's made loads of awful films. Never has he made an awful film for me actually, but he has made two bad ones, one of which I really enjoy. This is the only one I dislike, and I wouldn't recommend. I wouldn't say, "Oh, go check this out. This is a great film." But I'd say, go through Shyamalan's work. You may be surprised at kind of how many underrated films he's made, how baffling it is at times with the critics and him. At times I don't think they get him, and they don't quite. And that's kind of patronising to say, but they don't quite get him, and they don't want to praise him. I think at times he really gets a lot of hate, and this is the one that I understand. I really understand how people really dislike the film. I dislike it, Not an awful one, but a bad one, and definitely his worst one for me, or my least favourite. But yeah, I'm really, really pleased that he's come back, and that he is. Yeah, he started to make the films that he's great at making. He really is one of the best directors of all time. Really, one of the best when he's on form. And I cannot wait for Glass. And next up, of course, it could be within the next few days, is The Visit. So thanks for watching my review.